President Trump took to his social media platform, to Truth Social, and essentially said, hey, if you have a problem with some of the Jeffrey Epstein things, if you're still one of the people pushing that, I'm kind of done. It's a pretty radical statement. So I get, on the list of things as President of the United States, you probably don't want to be dealing with a whole litany of people coming at you about Jeffrey Epstein. But here we are.
I think that from the get-go of this, it doesn't make any sense about how it was handled. I mean, I think if you're a supporter of President Trump, you can honestly say that. You could say, why was this put out without more of a strategy? There's just not much of a strategy behind this, except for what you're going to talk about, the biggest conspiracy scandal that's kind of rocked the country and that has had legs too. I mean, it's continued on.
Yeah, he's been dead for many years, and it continues to go on and on and on. Whether that was footage coming out of the island, whether it's that countless documentaries,
so why are we even at
all of the swirl around it.
Why come out with anything definitive without a plan?
Yeah, because you had Dan Bongino and you had Kash Patel saying, "We know without a doubt," and here's the footage to prove it, and the footage to prove it was less than convincing for most people.
The internet's very quick on these things.
Yeah.
And you give them a video, even if the edits weren't deceptive, even if the conspiracy isn't there and there is nothing there, I think that you had to roll this out better. I mean, you had a duty to your own people, and I think casting them aside in a week is also probably, listen, I don't know if we make it through the summer and we're still talking about this, but Epstein has created its own industry.
And when we're talking about people that are bringing this up, you're talking about Mike Johnson, you're talking about some of these names. It's not necessarily only the fringe MAGA,
but people that don't want to be talking about it have to talk about it.
And then now the liberal press and the liberal social commentary is obviously jumping on this. This also comes from Elon saying, hey, the reason that it wasn't released was because certain names are on that list. Remember, that happened just a few weeks ago, which does seem to spiral a lot of this back into the public sphere.
And I think one of the reasons, sometimes President Trump speaks simplistically, and especially when he ties things together and talks about that. And then people are taking that and being like, wait a second, but he was in prison. And Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. How is that a hoax if they're in prison? I think we need to take a step back and start defining some terms here. What he's referring to the hoax is things that are maybe specifically like a list of clients or the black book that people like to talk about of his contacts.
I don't know if you ever get all the info on this, but what I'm interested in is that how strong his statements are.
Well, to me, I look
to
at
say
something,
he doesn't want people's support anymore.
Yeah. When I look at something like the JFK files, what people want is a release that doesn't exist, which is here's one paragraph that says, here's who actually did it. And that doesn't probably exist.
Let's take a look at the entire thing. One, we know that Jeffrey Epstein got preferential treatment from prosecutors 20 plus years ago in Florida. He got a sweetheart deal, was able to continue to work. He got to go home, but was in prison. Then the FBI decides to go back after him again, and that's when he died in prison. And then Ghislaine Maxwell is arrested on the same issue. If the FBI and the DOJ that had already given him preferential treatment was all of a sudden going to have this big expose, no, I think that those investigators, which during that time we've talked about corruption at the FBI, issues at the FBI, if they were looking for a broader conspiracy, then maybe there would be documents there. If they weren't, if they were just trying to go after one individual, then when they say we don't have information about this other stuff, that's likely true. Because we know that what's the job of Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino right now? Cleaning up the DOJ and the FBI. Yes, so if they don't have it now, their PR rollout, as you said, awful because they gave a false promise of I'm going to get you all this. And then they're like, we don't have it. Instead, say, you know what? We don't have it because that's what we're trying to do, clean up the FBI. So now we're going to go look for it. Yeah, you could say that.
I don't think that you ever had to say definitively that you exactly knew 100% what happened on a video, that if it's that edited and if they don't have that minute, they could go to that and say, listen, there's still a missing minute we don't know about. There's still questions that a lot of people are going to have. And we're not
case closed.
We're not right. That's where I think it upset people, is not to come out and say we don't have that information yet, or we don't have that in a way that we can produce. Yes, and I think there has to be a better level of protection. If you're the president of the United States, your people got to protect you better and prep you. So Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, if you really wanted to ultimately put this out, you'd want their full buy-in, not to where they felt like they were being drudged through to make these comments or having to threaten to walk away from their job because of what it will do. I don't know if the calculation was correct on how the legs of this, but all you had to do was realize that this guy's name has been in the top of people's top 20 list of issues to talk about, things that are on podcasts.
Seeing those most ardent supporters, including the podcast, or all the way to even some of the people that are on Capitol Hill, to turn on President Trump on this and turn on the Trump administration in this, it also gave fodder to liberal media, to, you could even say, celebrity media. Now all of a sudden they care about Jeffrey Epstein. That is sort of the weird part about it. Is I see a lot of a lot of the actors I follow and everything, they're starting to talk about it now.
Well, and even Hakeem Jeffries in the House, the Democrat leader, is making this his soapbox issue. Yeah. Where were they for 4 years under President Biden? If this was something so important and they thought they could get out. No, it's a political game. And I think that's why President Trump is so mad about it, is because he's seeing it being utilized by his enemies. And what does President Trump actually want to talk about? Things he's doing, accomplishments he's doing. Yeah. And so that's why I think he goes out there and issues a pretty strongly worded statement of like, just get away from this, because he's seeing what Hakeem Jeffries, even like The Daily Show, now CNN is basically Epstein network at this point, because they're seeing it as an opportunity to drive a wedge in conservatives. And that's what's a big problem. Dershowitz actually said, you're talking about Alan Dershowitz, he actually said Epstein never created a client list. So there is one thing where he has said he knows a lot more information. He defended Jeffrey Epstein, actually. It was one of the attorneys. But I do want to clarify that, is that he actually told many people that Epstein never created a client list.
He was more referring that they could put together a list.
Right. Now, that's the other issue, is that sometimes when the news, there's become shorthand for these things, like there is a list of clients. One is that is just shorthand for if he was doing this as almost a business or a blackmail operation or these things, that there would be that information somewhere. But once again, there's still a lot of unknown. And if, once again, the FBI was only investigating Jeffrey Epstein and not other people, then their evidence would be limited to what they were investigating, in theory, as well as if this isn't something they had evidence of or they didn't want there to be evidence of, it's not surprising that it would not be in the DOJ. And that goes back to the poor PR rollout by the Attorney General and everyone getting out there and saying, we're going to release this info, and even doing that binder facade and saying, here's what we've got, but then it being kind of a nothing burger, because maybe it is a nothing burger as far as the evidence of the DOJ goes. Then that's what you're here with. And that is why people are upset. And I understand that.
Evidence is only criminal conduct that they can prosecute. When they don't feel like there's any more lane to go down on actually prosecuting an act, there's nothing else for them to do. So they are there just to uncover mysteries. Now, could you order that they do a deeper dive into their investigation or into the evidence that came about? Sure, but that's really not their job if there's no more criminal prosecution.